Howdy, everybody. Another episode of From the Pink Seats podcast. Tonight's show, we're going to be talking about new injuries that could affect the Louisville football team. We've got Matt's stats, and then we're previewing Boston College with a special guest. Let's get this intro rolling. We're close to Cincinnati, and the last name Castellanos, a bit infamous in that city now. So for once and for all, we're going to rely on you, AJ. Is it Castellanos or is it Castellanos? Hello and welcome to another episode of From the Pink Seats podcast here on the State of Louisville Podcast Network. Thank you all for tuning in to get your first and only podcast dedicated exclusively to University of Louisville football. If you haven't already, get down in there and hit that subscribe button. If you're on the YouTube, if you're on the podcast feed, make sure you're subscribed so we can always be pushed to your feed every episode that comes out. I'm producer Keith. With me, as always, Vince Lococo, Matt McGavic. Fellas, how are we doing?
Hey, you got it right this time with the me first and followed up with the Matt. So
I had to do it just to prove it to myself.
I'm not French today.
Good for you. Good for you. I'm good, Matt. I mean, we didn't talk about it last week, but it turns out that you've now turned into the best thing in the world with the T-shirt of Peyton Siva.
Oh my God.
That is incredible, brother. That's incredible.
I am still catching flack for a stupid ass photo a week later.
Crawford too.
Crawford.
I'm like, man. Oh well. You just gotta own it at this point.
Oh yeah, I'm not looking forward to seeing all the signs and shirts at Kentucky when Louisville goes there, because I'll be going there obviously as well, because it's only like a hour and a half away. So like that part's not going to be fun. But what can you do?
You got to just walk in and be like, "Let me hear it. Let me hear it. Give it to me. Give it to me." Antagonize them.
I'll take another fucking photo.
Yeah, right.
That's what we should do for the podcast. New headshots. Just all of us look disheveled as shit and have someone take a photo. Well, cool. Matt, there were a couple of questions that popped up on the last episode of the podcast, and I figured we weren't going to be able to let you get off the hook. Now, the first question is a bit tricky because you aren't with us mere peasants in the pink seats during the games. You're up there in your ivory tower looking down upon us all in your press box with your amenities. But when you are a man of the people, what's your favorite food item to get at Cardinal Stadium?
It's probably either a pizza or like, do they have Bavarian pretzels still there?
Yes,
like
dude. Me and Emmy kill one of those like
so
once a game. Easy.
Like, it doesn't matter what sporting event I'm going to. If they've got soft pretzels, it's on. It's happening. Yeah. Like, I love soft pretzels. They're so good.
So I don't dislike the pretzels. It's more just being a means of delivering that super artificial, fake tasting nacho cheese down my gullet. Because I will just coat half a pretzel in that, shove it in my mouth, and try to swallow it like a pelican.
I'm sure I'm not alone, but I could use more than just that one small cheese cup with my pretzel. I can easily do like 2 or 3 of them. And don't even get me started on the jalapeno cheddar.
Especially if it's like beer cheese or something.
Oh, now you're getting fancy on me. So I had an alternate version of the question if you hadn't been down in a while, just like, what's your favorite press box food item then? So
cookies.
Those cookies are pretty damn good.
As a someone like I have call-in play-by-play on some games in my past. Best spread I ever had was NAIA National Championships for basketball. Oh my God, they spoiled us. Like the finger sandwiches, they had spanakopita. I had that for the first time. They had, instead of just like generic, like Costco bulk cookies, it was like the actual packets of, I think it was like Auntie Ethel's or Grandma's cookies or something like that. And like the pack, and it was like a 2-pack for like $1 back in the day. They had just a pallet of those on the table. It was delightful. So it's easy to get hooked on the presser food life. So
I miss my athlete food life where I would be getting Kingsley's once a week. I really took that for granted.
That's so good.
Yeah. The other question, which I'm not even going to lie and say it was hotly debated because I feel like you'd probably be able to guess Vince, mine, and Jacob's answers. One player from this team, you're pulling the trigger on an NIL jersey. Who are you going to get?
Gosh. Let me guess. You guys chose whoever was number 69.
Jeez, no. I went with Dwayne. You were dirty. You dirty mod. You were bad.
That was okay. Dwayne was going to be my second guess, but
you
just
had to make sure.
I had to cover my bases. Yeah,
right. Respect.
Honestly, I'd probably get Thor. Like, because his name's Thor. I know his first name's not going to be on his jersey, but I mean,
Griffith's not bad either. I mean,
yeah, that too. Plus, his number is like 50. That's not a common number.
Yeah, strong.
50 numbers are the good number. But yeah, so Jacob took Egan and I took Austin Collins. So definitely some pandering done there. But we talked a little bit about the team, but the team got some bad news this week. Inquired by R1 Matt McGavic. We learned this week that Jamari Johnson, a guy that all of us were really high on and thought he was making a lot of strides this year, he's going to be gone for the remainder of the season with what looked like, I don't know if it's confirmed to, but what looked like an ankle injury in the last game. We'll go hockey rules and say lower body injury.
Yeah, no, Brom did confirm it was an ankle. If I had to guess, like some sort of fracture, but he didn't specify. But he did say it was an ankle injury when I asked him.
I'm honestly glad it's just an ankle because with that angle, it could have been his hip. And, I mean, that would have been the worst of the worst. It could have been an ACL, could have been a meniscus. It could have been any of those worser knee injuries. So I think we kind of made out lucky with it being just something at the ankle if you want to find, glass half full in the situation.
Yeah, the silver lining.
Yeah, silver lining. That's the word I was looking for.
So with this injury now, at least the top of the depth chart at the tight end position takes a little bit of a hit. Do you expect to see any larger scale adjustments with this change, or do you expect him just to grab Nate Kariski and try to plug and play? It's like, hey, you're Jamari now, go.
I think probably the plug and play approach, just because up to this point in the season, I mean, obviously Mark Redmond and Jamari have gotten some targets, but it's not like they've been a super massive part of the offense. If anything, I could see more of what would have been Jamari's reps and targets and whatnot probably go more to Redmond, and then maybe trying to piecemeal it together in some 12 personnel sets or two, those type of sets where you get Nate Kariski on there, but it's really like a play designed for Mark Redmond or because I know Jaleel Skinner, I mean, he's an option, but he's been playing mainly on special teams up to this point. Isaiah Cummings, I don't think we've seen him hardly at all this year. So I don't think it changes a ton, but I do think we're going to see probably a bigger dose of Mark Redmond, if anything.
Joke's on y'all. We were keeping him hidden. Dylan Messman, the secret weapon.
I'm kind of excited to see more Mark Redmond. I know it's unfortunate that Jamari's out, but at the same time, it's going to get, a little bit more repertoire between Tyler and Mark. Knowing where you see Kelsey and Mahomes have this great chemistry of knowing where they're going to be and everything. I'm not saying it's going to be anything like that, but I mean, it could definitely help a lot more on third downs with us, struggling there.
Is Vince Collinsworth joining us on the podcast? I honestly, the thing that sucks the most about
AJ Hawk, I'm just going to say minimal things and stare at the camera.
Hey, I'm the one with the long hair. That should be my bit. But the thing that's going to suck the most about Jamari being out is just the run blocking presence that he brought. He was really becoming a key player in the run game just because it's not often you find a tight end that's not a liability run blocking. And I mean, given his pressers, as long as he's being honest with us, he appeared to enjoy it. So that's going to be a thing that I miss. One other thing I noted, or caught of note, I actually didn't even get the chance to put it on our show notes, so raw reaction here. I noticed that Renato Brown actually got top billing at right guard on the depth chart piece that you just put out, Matt. Don't expect that to be the case, or
it's literally been the same case the entire season. It's been Renato or Austin, but Austin's been starting the entire time.
Okay,
it's been the same way the whole season. So
okay, because we're getting right about the time of the Pittsburgh game last year, so I was wondering if it was just a case of, oh, maybe he's back and starting to go again. And then in my head, I was screaming, you better not take reps away from Austin.
Yeah, I mean, Austin hasn't done anything to where he would jeopardize losing his spot. I mean, they're in the perfect spot, where it's anytime Austin needs a breather, Renato's right there with fresh legs. And same thing goes for Mike Gonzalez. If Mike needs a break, Renato can get thrown in over that way or Austin the other way. So it's a nice little rotation they have going on right now.
Although, some good news on, that offensive line front. I mean, it sounds like Monroe Mills might return sooner than we expected, just because I believe on the pregame radio broadcast, someone there noted that, Mills was maybe not warming up, but he was dressed, and I think he might have been warming up, but he was, going through the motions that someone who's got a not season-long injury, but a long-term injury would normally do. So maybe we might see him sooner than we expect, which would be huge because having someone to protect your blind side is key. And not only that, you can get more reps over at right tackle for Rashid.
Right. Hey, don't underestimate the power of grit and Toradol, baby. But yeah, Monroe Mills, it would be fantastic to have him back in the fold sooner rather than later. I mean, because we're not going to have him 100% the rest of the season, but if him at 70 is good enough to go and gives us better production than what we've seen, I'm all for it.
Yeah,
you know what else I'm all for? I'm all for being delivered nuggets of advanced information in a means that a common man could understand. And you know where I like to go to get that? Our friend Matt McGavic. It's time for some Matt stats.
All right, so going by Boston College's kind of baseline pro football focus analytics, there's several of them that were kind of grouped in the 30s, some in the 70s. Honestly, from an analytical standpoint, Boston College is graded out at a lot better than I thought they would at this point in the season, because they've kind of tapered off the last few weeks or so. I mean, their overall grade of 89.2 was 37th in the FBS, which is pretty good. And the overall grades that kind of stood out the most to me was their rushing grade, which was just 69.9, which was 121st in the FBS, which is obviously not great because there's 134 teams.
I thought it was pretty nice.
Yeah. It's crazy because while they don't run the ball well, when they do, their run blocking is fantastic because their 76.5 run blocking grade is 13th in the FBS. So it's part of Bill O'Brien's scheme where they don't run it a ton, and he's a former quarterback and wide receivers coach, so it makes sense why they have a slightly bigger emphasis on the passing game. But a little bit surprising that they haven't run the ball more, because it's been kind of a strength on their offensive line. And actually, that is a perfect segue to the offensive line, because on the offense, even though it's not a particularly great offense, just because for their total offensive stats, they're 96 in the FBS at 355.4 yards per game, which obviously is not good. But where they do excel, and if you're Louisville, you might get a little bit concerned there, is that they excel on the offensive line. In fact, their top 4 offensive players with at least 100 snaps are all offensive linemen. There's tackle Ozzie Trapillo at 83.3 and tackle and shoot Bowery at 76.3, and then there's center Drew Kendall 75, and then guard Logan Taylor at 72.2. And the fact that their top offensive players are both offensive tackles, and Louisville's edge rushers have been kind of hit or miss this season. It's
Miss.
a little bit of it's a little bit of a mismatch there. So that's definitely something to watch. And it's not even just at the tackle spot. I mean, like I said, the offensive line across the board is great. In fact, the only teams with at least a 75 pass block and run block grade are Boston College, Iowa, Kansas, Indiana, Navy, Mizzou, and NIU. So there's a lot of Big Ten teams scrambling there. There's a Service Academy team in there. Basically some teams that you would kind of expect to have, some hog mollies up front. And I did uncover a very interesting statistical split with one Thomas Castellanos. And of course, I don't know if it's Castellanos or Castellanos, but as a Reds fan, I'm accustomed to sue me if I'm saying it wrong.
I don't know if I'm going to put this headset on again.
So we obviously know how good of a dual threat quarterback that Thomas Castellanos is. I mean, he passed for 2,200 yards last season, and I think ran for 1,100. So in last year, he wasn't that great of a passer, even though he put up some yards. He only had a 57.7 pass grade, but an 82.7 run grade. This year, he's become a lot more polished of a passer while simultaneously not being as effective as a runner or even being utilized as a runner hardly at all. He's got a 78 pass grade and a 51.5 rushing grade. And something that was really interesting that stood out to me is not only the fact that his rushing totals have plummeted compared to what they were last season, it's how he's used. So obviously he ran for 1,113 yards last season. That's a lot for anyone, much less a quarterback. So of those rushing yards, 917 of those were on designed runs. So, QB power, QB read, zone read option, plays that are specifically designed to put the ball in Castellanos' hands and just get yards. So fast forward to this season, he only has 161 rushing yards, and of that, only 98 of them are designed rushing yards. So he goes from 900 plus last season on designed rushes, to not even 100 up to this point in the season on designed rushes. So Bill O'Brien is not only utilizing him more as a passer, he's not even utilizing his abilities as a runner, So while Castellanos does have dual threat capabilities and has shown it as recently as last season, it's not really as much of a mismatch as one would expect, considering Louisville has not really defended dual threat quarterbacks very well. But Bill O'Brien, unless he sees something in the film and makes the adjustment to incorporate more QB design runs in this game, that it doesn't seem like that's going to be something that Louisville really has to prepare for a lot.
My theory on this is that Bill O'Brien and Castellanos probably had a conversation prior to the season starting with not saying I don't want to take less hits, but saying I want to show the NFL that I am not just a running type of guy. I have got to be able, and Bill O'Brien being, like you said, being the quarterback, wide receiver guy he is, probably said, I know exactly how to do that for you. But taking away his best asset.
Yeah, no, that very well could be the case. And my last one, I'm not going to talk about the defense as a whole, just because we're going to get into that. But I did want to highlight their top defender, which is edge rusher Donovan Ezraku. So he's got a defensive grade of 86.7, and that also comes with a run defense grade of 86.5, a tackle grade of 82.7, and a pass rush grade of 85.8. All really, really great attributes. The only thing he doesn't really excel in is coverage, which he's an edge rusher. Unless you're an outside linebacker in a 3-4 scheme, you're not going to drop back into coverage. Or if you're running, which was past weekend with Ashton Gelati. But I digress.
What a jab.
And so I went looking to see, okay, how many other defenders in the FBS have like that good of collection of, tackle, run defense, pass rush, all that. Well, it turns out just one other player in the FBS, minimum 100 defensive snaps, has a 80-plus grade in run defense, tackle, and pass rush. And it is, oddly enough, Nebraska cornerback Sierra Wright, which, good for him. But he's in rarefied air in terms of, his advanced statistical profile. So with sort of the issues that Louisville has at tackle right now, whether that be to injury or underperformance, Ezraku has, the capability to maybe throw a wrench into Louisville's offensive game plan.
Yeah, that makes me nervous for sure. I mean, with the struggles that we've had on the offensive line this past couple of weeks, especially whenever we're put against pretty decent pass rush and Notre Dame and, SMU as well. So,
yeah, that is something that's kind of intimidating and kind of spooky as we get ready to go into the weekend.
But I see what you did there. Halloween season, spooky.
Yeah. But you know what's not intimidating or spooky? Our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Football is back, and it's here to stay, at least until February. So enjoy it while we have it. You can win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on your favorite player stats like touchdowns, passing yards, or more. So I got in the action a little bit early this week because I saw a couple of numbers I liked. So for the Thursday night game, I have a couple of picks. Eli Holstein or Holstein, I'm not sure which pronunciation he's got. I don't know how German he is, but I'm picking him to go higher than 0.5 interceptions Thursday against Syracuse. And on the other end of that game, I've got Kyle McCord going higher than 319.5 passing yards Thursday against Pitt. And then just to make it a little three-legger, I did get a little bit ahead, and I looked on to Saturday with our friends up I-71 and Brendan Sorsby, quarterback for Cincinnati, going higher than 264.5 passing and rushing yards combined as they take on Colorado. That combination there gives me the opportunity to win up to 6.3 times my unit wagered. So, that being said, making picks on Underdog is straightforward, and signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com and sign up with promo code PINKSEATS, and Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code PINKSEATS to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. Must be 18 plus and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Thanks, Underdog Fantasy. And now it's time to preview Boston College in the upcoming game this Friday evening. And with us to help us do that, AJ Black of Locked On Boston College and 24/7 Sports. AJ, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey guys, great to be back on and ready to talk some more BC Louisville.
Oh man, we're gonna have to workshop the pronunciation on Louisville. The locals are gonna get busted.
Oh, sorry.
I wasn't gonna say it.
Can I do it from a Boston accent, from my Boston perspective?
Yes,
I've been in enough
please.
podcasts. Let me try it so you guys all can murder me for it. Is it Louisville? Is that right?
You know what? That's pretty good.
Nice. That's better. A lot better.
I was going to suggest, like, if you've got some peanut butter in the pantry, just stick a little bit.
Yeah.
I tell people, say it like you got food in your mouth.
But AJ, so Boston College coming into this season, it's year one for new head coach Bill O'Brien, currently 4-3 at this point in the year. What's sort of the mood around the football program with how the season's gone so far?
Well, I think there's a lot of skepticism right now because of two really bad weeks in a row, and some bad things that are going on consistently right now with BC, which is turnovers and the defense is falling apart. Before that, it was all positive. Like you had, opening win against, I know they're terrible now, but it was a win against Florida State in Tallahassee. That was big. You held your own against Missouri. You beat Michigan State. You beat Western Kentucky. Feeling pretty good. Then Virginia happens and the game just falls apart and you get smoked by Virginia Tech. And you came back a little bit there, but I think fans were hoping that the momentum from the beginning of the season was going to continue, and they've hit a blip in the road. And so there's a lot of BC fans and around the program, or BC fans specifically, are just like, they've been dealing with crap for 15 years. And so they just go right back to, this is terrible. We're going to be terrible. This is going to be terrible. And it's like, guys, breathe. It happens. While Bill O'Brien, who is an old school coach, is furious all the time now, which is fine. Chewed my head off at the press conference last Saturday, which was fine. But this is where the program's, it's going to have its ebbs and flows. That's what happens when you rebuild a program. And, when you have a quarterback like Thomas Castellanos, who I love watching, but he's trying to change him. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that in a little bit. I think this is just year one, and he hasn't, he jumped into this program, after National Signing Day, once all the transfers were on campus. None of this is Bill O'Brien's team. They ran out of roster spots for even to get any late transfers. So this is just all Jeff Hafley guys. And I think it's just reasonable to think like, okay, so this is what we have now, but give it some time. Like, let him get his guys in here. I'm sure he's going to, get some transfers next year. He's got a huge recruiting class coming in. It's patience, but at BC right now, and like any college sports team, right? There's no patience.
Do you think that Castellanos taking a hit to his rushing stats this year? Is that more Bill O'Brien trying to get him ready for the next level, or trying to show him off for the next level, or are they trying to dial it back to protect him a little bit more?
I think it's a little bit of both. Bill O'Brien will say that he and Tommy says it too, right? Like that he just doesn't want to. Like last year, the last 4 games of the season, he was playing with this one of those AC. I think it was the AC joint that he busted up. So you look at his statistics from passing, and it was all messed up, and it was his left shoulder, but still, like it just got his equilibrium all messed up. So this year, O'Brien comes in, he's got his history with quarterbacks. He's worked with Brady. He's worked with Deshaun Watson. He's worked with Matt McGloin. I mean, who made him Big Ten Player of the Year. So, like, he's got a history with quarterbacks, and he immediately said he was going to work with Tommy Castellanos on becoming more of a quarterback. You heard about that all spring. You heard about it all summer. And what we've seen so far is more of a quarterback, right? Like I think he's got like 14 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and his completion percentage is up by like 11%, which is great. He's doing much better there. But as you noticed, his numbers in rushing are way down. And watching it in being, around the team, his instincts for years for the last year was to, like, he makes his read, it's not there, goes. Bill O'Brien's kind of like beat him out of that, basically. Like, make your first read, make your second read, make your third read. Okay, that's not there, then run. So he's trying to be more of like a quarterback. We saw that for weeks. It was working, but it really wasn't, because like even when he would run, by that point the pressure was on. I mean, he couldn't get out of it. So we saw glimpses of it again against Virginia Tech. But personally, just from someone who observes, he's 5'9". I don't know what I don't think his ceiling can be that high for being a passing quarterback. He can only do so much in terms of the intermediate and short stuff because he can't see over his 6'7" offensive lineman. It's just part of what he's dealing with. So I'm not the biggest fan. I'm glad that they're fixing some of the issues that he had with footwork and making reads and not making terrible passes, because he did a lot of that. Right. But I'm not the biggest fan of him now thinking so much that he loses the explosiveness. And that's something that O'Brien, I think, understands. And I think he's going back to, okay, we got to let him cook when he can cook, because like that's what's going to get our offense going. You saw pieces of that against Virginia Tech, but it's definitely something that he hasn't been doing.
So
guys, I don't know about you guys, but that sounds like what Louisville dealt with Malik Cunningham for.
That's exactly what I was thinking, man.
Oh
And the
my
whole time he was talking, I was thinking about Malik, like how Seth was trying to turn him into this pocket passer there for a while, and eventually,
Oh my God! Yeah.
I mean, he learned very quickly that you just got to put the ball in your best player's hand at some point.
So two last questions. First of all, there's been we're close to Cincinnati, and the last name Castellanos, a bit infamous in that city now. So for once and for all, we're going to rely on you, AJ. Is it Castellanos or is it Castellanos?
Castellanos. The first one. It's Castellanos. Yep.
Okay. And
I like Tommy better. Tommy just is nice, smooth. You can't mess up
Italian.
Yeah,
Tommy C.
Oh man,
that's beautiful.
So the other thing that I was going to ask, so the talk about trying to make him more of a, for lack of a better term, pro style passer.
Mm-hmm.
Have there been any noticeable changes in sort of the play calling? Are they trying to move the pocket more to let him get out in open space to sort of compensate for not being able to see over giant linemen in the trenches?
Yeah, he doesn't stay. He'll stay in the pocket if he's going to be going deep, basically. He'll be able to see past that and get it out. But you see a lot of him rolling out. You see him, and that has led to some issues too, because good defenses can scheme to that. And there's been times where they're just waiting for him to roll out, and then there's a defender there to blast him, because that's just the offensive line isn't as great as it's been for BC last year. So there's been some issues with that, but they have schemed a little bit around that. He's going to go pistol, he's going to go shotgun, and I think you're going to see more designed runs for him. It seems like that's been more the case the last week or so. And O'Brien, I think, is just trying to figure that out. But again, the biggest issue with him right now, though, and I think it kind of led off with this is turnovers. He fumbled the ball 3 times against Virginia Tech. 2 of them he lost. He blew the game against Virginia because I don't even know what the play was, but he was again rolling out, and the ball just came out of his little 5'9" hand and right into Jonas Sanker's mitts. And he ran it back for a touchdown. That just killed the game. It was one of, I think, 3 turnovers there. Castellanos, at one point, I'm going to screw this statistic up, I think it was 5 out of 7 drives between Virginia and Virginia Tech ended with him turning the ball over.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
So are these fumbles you described the one where it sounded like he was rolling out. You said, are they him in the pocket, or are they – I know his rushing stats are down, or is it him more going downfield? I mean, we had one with Tyler Shuck against Notre Dame where he was 50 yards downfield and got the ball punched out from behind by a defender.
Usually it's behind the line of scrimmage. So against Virginia Tech, it was a botched mesh handoff. I think he just held it too long and they both kind of just fell on the ball. He had another one where he didn't know what to do with a pitch, and that one they recovered, but he again just kind of hesitated and threw it. It's not just that too, because then there's other times where he's getting killed by the offensive line.
Right.
So it's all over the place, but it's not like he hasn't been. I don't think he's been chased down and knocked the ball out. It's all
behind the line of
scrimmage. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just kind of mental mess ups, I guess.
Yeah. Bill was saying today, he's like, someone asked him, he's like, are the fumbles mental or physical? And he goes, doesn't friggin' matter. Just got to stop. All right.
He's such a football guy.
He totally is. Yep.
Now, do you think it's possible that Anthony Calandria's Butterfingers transferred over to Thomas Castellanos after the Virginia game?
It must have. It was a disease that just went from one mobile quarterback who's chaotic to another, right?
Takes the whoopsie daisy crown and
yeah.
So we talked a lot about Castellanos because, of course, quarterbacks get the clicks. Mm-hmm. Who are some other stars on this Boston College team that casual fan who just sort of scrolls through is gonna, if they're watching this game, they're going to jump off the screen and say, oh, wow, who's that guy?
You got to start on the defensive side of the ball. Donovan Ezaraku, he is the only guy in their front 7 that can pressure a quarterback, and he can do it at a level that's higher than many players in the ACC. He, up until last week when Antoine Powland Ryland ate their lunch and had like 4 sacks. Azareku was leading the ACC in sacks. He has 9. He won the game against Western Kentucky because BC was playing with their backup at that point, and their offense couldn't do anything. And he strip sacked the quarterback at like the 5-yard line late in the fourth quarter. He's everywhere. So he's a big time threat to watch for. On the offensive side of the ball, I like to bring him up just because he's got a great name. It's Turbo Richard.
Perfect.
Obviously I work for 247 and I covered his recruiting, and I don't know what his first name is. I just know him as Turbo. His recruiting profile was Turbo. Every time I asked him, he told me his name was Turbo. He's Turbo. He's built like a muscular hamster. He's huge. He's 5'9", but like
so Doug Martin.
yeah, kind of like that, right? And he's been getting more and more snaps as he figures out the pass blocking part of this of being a running back. That was kind of his issue, but he's the most well-rounded running back they have and most explosive that they have. True freshman. He's kind of taken the spot of Kai Robichaux, who just hasn't been doing much he scored a touchdown last week, but he hasn't been consistent. And Trayshawn Ward, who, if you followed Florida State for a while, he's probably their most consistent offensive player that they have. He killed Florida State when they played against them. He had a big touchdown, and they were running a wheel route thing for like 3 weeks with him that no one could figure out. Now everyone stops it, but he's been a big thing for BC, so he's another one. On the defensive side of the ball, the other name that I like to bring up is KP Price, who's a safety that's really starting to come into his own. The secondary has been pretty good, even against Virginia Tech, because Virginia Tech didn't. I think they passed the ball 18 times against BC because they could. I mean, they ran for 300 plus. Why would you
Right.
throw it?
Exactly.
But KP Price, when you have a passing attack, is very good. Like he and Azareku stopped Virginia on like the 1-yard line on like 3 straight plays, just the two of them, just nonstop. And he's developing into a lot. But again, I bring this up because it's just important to continue to note, and BC fans continue to forget this. This entire roster is Jeff Hafley's roster. Like I think Bill O'Brien's going to go in a very different direction when he can get his guys here. When we'll see with the portal and how many guys I also think there's going to be some guys that are going to exit out.
Right, of course. Yeah.
That are encourage transfers.
Yes, exactly. and as someone who covers, I can tell you exactly who they're probably going to be. But like you're going to see a lot of those guys coming, and then more Bill O'Brien guys that can do this kind of stuff are going to be. But you've gone in the span of a year from everyone's best friend, Jeff Hafley, who is just like the nice coach that everyone was supposed to like, but apparently like behind closed doors. His practices were closed, which was a complete waste of time as a reporter. Like go to a press conference and ask questions about things you can't even see. So that's great. Great, media friendly guy at that point. He was so passive aggressive with that stuff, but to Bill O'Brien, who will scream and yell at you, but will also give you access to everything. Right. So it's been a very big culture change at BC from the top to the bottom. And I think you'll see a little bit of that because like things like tackling and making mistakes, that's been like the issue the last 2 weeks. But before that, they were like 3rd in the country in penalties. They were not missing tackles. They were very sound in what they were doing. And that starts at the top. That's something that Bill O'Brien has really drilled into them. And I think it's a credit to the staff for like understanding the issues from last year and trying to fix them.
So real quick about a couple questions about the defense. Going back to Azareku, I mean, 6'2", 237. When you're looking at like a high class edge rush, you usually think of someone maybe pushing closer to 250, 260. Is he really good with his hands at the point of attack? Does he transition speed to power well? Like what makes him a good edge rusher? And secondly, I mean, you weren't joking about the secondary. I mean, I think they've got 9 interceptions. Like,
yeah,
are they opportunistic? Do they play pretty like complementary football on the back end, or what is it about that secondary that's making them click right now?
Yeah, so Azareku does a lot of things. He's not the most powerful guy, so it's a lot of speed and finesse with his moves. You'll see him get around guys and like. And use his quickness to get those moves going. He's got some power to him, but he's not going to bull rush anyone. He's gonna he's a spin move or swat and get around him. So you see a little bit more of that from them. In terms of the secondary, I think there's a big, again, I go back to culture change, and it's more of a schematic change of what they have. So BC brought in Tim Lewis to be their defensive coordinator. And I think everybody, whether you follow BC or didn't, when they hired him, I think the general reaction was, who? Because like he hadn't coached in the NFL or college football for, I think it was like 12 years. Like he has been a complete non-factor.
Extended vacation.
He was in the XFL and the AFL. I don't know, one of the other like summer leagues. He had been doing that for the last 2 or 3 years. And Bill O'Brien, I asked him because I was like, how did you find this guy? And he was like, yeah, I met him at a coaching clinic and he just blew me away. So he had been a coach for like the Giants back when Tom Coughlin was there, with the Steelers back in the day. So he's an older dude, but he brings a different approach to the defense than Jeff Hafley did. Jeff Hafley, his system is working well with Green Bay right now, but it did not work well with BC because he would super aggressive in terms of the way that his coverage schemes were going, but you didn't have the athletes that you would get when you played a Louisville or a Florida State or Clemson, and you just get burned constantly because your guys are just, they're on an island or they're, they're not in the best position. Lewis, on the other hand, I think he gets a better grasp at what BC has, which is his goal, didn't work against Virginia Tech, is to make you march down the field. Bend, don't break, right? And then you get the interceptions because how many college quarterbacks are going to get stupid and make a mistake if they have to keep pushing down the field for 12, 13 plays? They're not used to that. They're used to, big chunk plays. So that's where it has led to a lot of mistakes. We saw it with Aiden Childs at Michigan State. Like he was like very consistently moving that, but he got frustrated and then started chucking up passes and BC just kept picking him off. So like, I think that's kind of what they're going for. And I think it's a good scheme for BC because you're never going to get the athletes you're going to get here as like some of these other schools. So it works, but against Virginia Tech, it didn't. So it worked against Virginia other than Thomas Castellanos couldn't stop fumbling it. So,
right.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things Boston College, like the staff, what do they believe they have to do if they want to beat Louisville?
Stop turning the ball over.
Simple enough.
Literally what they said to me today. They were saying they need to tackle better. They needed to stop fumbling. And I would not want to be at a practice with O'Brien right now because I'm sure he's like, all we're doing is ball security drills. And I'm like, okay.
I played for Coach Petrino, and Coach O'Brien sounds pretty intense in its own right.
It sounds like, honest, because a lot of that sounds exactly like Coach Brum. Are they just pumping these coaches out with like a pull string mechanism where it's the same 5 lines that just rotate?
It sounds like it. Good Lord.
But it's part of the coaching convention they go to.
I got to read you one of his quotes today because it was something. When it happened, I was like, "What?" and it sounds really corny, but I think your listeners are going to like this. So they asked him about running the football because of the issues that they had, and this is Bill O'Brien's response. When you're carrying the football for Boston College, you're carrying the hopes and dreams of BC, the hopes and dreams of the football team, the school, the city. I was like, all right.
That's a football guy.
Yeah.
So, Vince, did that make the same football neurons in your brain start firing off?
Everything started clicking. Yeah. Of course I am. Yes. I guarantee you at some point in practice, he walked out there and pointed. He's like, you see those seats? That's all season ticket holders. That's what you're playing for right here. Every single one of those seats. Yep.
Oh, the eagle on the way out to the field probably called that out. Like, you see this? This is the pride of Boston.
Okay. So other than turnovers, is there like any like niche stuff that, some concerns that maybe if they add up over the course of the game could snowball into something bigger?
Missed tackles. There was issues with Virginia Tech that I haven't seen it at all, like other than this game, where they were just there's their starting linebacker who's been there forever, Cam Arnold, went down with an injury, and he was in a sling on Monday. And again, we'll talk coach talk again. Bill O'Brien said today that it was a precautionary measure, and I was like, okay,
to wear a sling.
To wear a sling.
Okay.
I don't think he's going to play,
That's
but
awesome.
he said he was day to day.
That's great.
So
that's some gamesmanship if I've ever seen it.
I just need a podcast of Bill O'Brien quotes. That's what I need. That's what I need in my life.
Mm-hmm.
No.
As I was saying, he chewed me out. I asked him. They were down 14 in the fourth on Thursday against Virginia Tech, and in the fourth quarter, and they had the ball at like the 20-yard line on fourth down, and BC's special teams has sucked for years. Just to be frank, they just have not been good. And he chose to kick a field goal, and of course, down 14 with like 8 minutes left. Of course, the snap goes over the snapper's the holder's head, and then they lose it. So I asked him. I said, "I'm just curious. What was your thinking going into that, going for field goal?"
Right.
And he got so mad at me for that. He was like, "AJ, I screwed up." He goes, "Is that what you want? You can write that in your paper. Go write down that I screwed up." I'm like, "Okay." And then he goes, he goes on to the next question. And he stops again and then goes, "AJ, that was my mistake. Write that down." I'm like, "Oh, all right, Bill."
Yeah,
hey, at least he's owning it.
Yeah. You sent me that clip like when it happened that night. I was like, "Oh."
He gave me.
I thought I was having a bad week with team photos.
He gave me 2 drops that I'm going to be using for my show for years. That were just perfect. Like him saying, like, "That was my rationale, AJ. I screwed up." And I'm going to play that every time I need it. So thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
So now, getting to know Bill throughout the course of the year, do you think that playing against a team like Louisville, and a little peek on the Louisville side of the fence, we have gotten destroyed by mobile quarterbacks, either A, extending plays, or B, just taking off and running for the last 3-4 games now?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's something where Coach O'Brien's like, you know what? There's an opportunity here. Let's throw a little bit of tendency breaker on our scout tape.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy, let it rip this week. Go wild.
I could see that happening. I saw pieces of it last week, and Virginia Tech's their defensive line was just too good, so they couldn't do it as well as I think they wanted to. But if there's the opportunity there, I could see him not trying to push it and doing more of the run to open up the pass than to pass, passing sake. I think that's going to be more. And I think even against Louisville last year, BC couldn't stop your offense, but I think Castellanos had like 3 touchdown passes in that game, and was able to move it at times. I think, you'll see some passing out of him, but I really do think like let him do that and let him run the offense the way he's done it. And try to go back to a little bit of that. I think there's a chance that he could do that. And hopefully O'Brien will be happy with that.
God, that just terrifies me. It's like, no, Bill is so stubborn. Yeah. He's going to make him stay in the pocket no matter how.
Please be stubborn.
So it seems like turnovers are pretty high on the list of biggest worries for Boston College. Anything else that really jumps out going into this specific matchup, just other than ball security?
As I mentioned earlier, special teams has been a mess. They've gotten better, but their first like 3 or 4 games, BC could not punt at all. Their starting punter, Sam Candotti, I think is still on the team. He's listed on the depth chart. I haven't seen him.
He's still on the team.
He doesn't play anymore. So they had one practice. They just had an open punter practice, and because he shanked like 3 in a row against Duquesne and Florida State. So Bill was pretty pissed. So he went for some other guys. It took a while because those other guys still struggled. So that's been an issue. And they've been throwing some random guys back to return punts that I haven't been all that. I'm not sure why they're doing what they're doing. This is
can't be that weird. We had an outside linebacker back there at one point.
Oh my god!
Oh my god!
I forgot about that.
They've got this like 5'9" corner that Jeff Hafley got committed like on National Signing Day, but not like the fun like big school National Signing Day signings. It's like
this guy?
Yeah, it's like let's take a flyer on this kid. All of a sudden he's returning punts, and I mean I was there all summer. I never saw him doing that. I was like, okay, You get Jaden McGowan, who was with Vanderbilt last year, and he was one of the SEC's best punt returners, and all of a sudden he's not there. So there's been some questions there. They've other than the botched field goal, I think they've only attempted one field goal all year. So I'm not even sure if they can do is it possible? I've watched BC for years and know that they can't. They're one of the most college kicker oriented teams ever. Like they're all over the place. So could that happen again? Sure. So I think special teams is something that has been an issue. I think I've been waiting for it to bite them harder than it has because it's just been that bad. But I think that could be something to watch for too.
So on the flip side of that, just from you being around BC and you're doing your own research on Louisville and watching film and all that, what do you think is the area where BC kind of has like the biggest advantage, or some area where you expect them to exploit the most in order to try and pull off the upset?
It's been so interesting. They can run the ball. They ran it for over 170 yards against Virginia Tech, but they in that game they had to pass because they were behind so much. I think you watch what they did against Florida State, and I go back to that game, and I'm like, why don't they do a game plan like that more often? Because they just drug Florida State up and down the field running the ball, and had Castellanos doing what I was hoping he would do, which I think he ran for like 70 yards in that game. I think if they go to that and stop trying to throw so much, I think this offense could be more effective. I think they when they lean on the run, they were able to move the ball and they're able to get first downs. It's just that they get bored. It seems like they get bored with it, and then they'll make a mistake, and then that just puts them behind the sticks, and they're back to punting, or they make a mistake that causes a turnover again. So I think it's just like that. Being real with what they can do with that and consistently doing it and not giving it up. Because I think long drives, keeping Louisville on the sideline as much as possible is going to be it's going to have to be how they're going to have to approach this. If they try to make it a track meet, they're going to get blown out.
So what I'm hearing, Boston College auditioning for the Big Ten West in the next round of expansion.
Oh my gosh. Put us up against Northwestern and Minnesota and all those schools. Yeah, do it.
Well, AJ, I want to thank you so much for hopping on with us. Go ahead and tell our audience where they can find you if they want to learn more about Boston College.
Yeah, you can check me out at Locked On BC. I'm the only nut crazy enough to talk about BC football 5 days a week. Get my daily BC podcast. I got a whole episode coming up tonight where I'm trying to be more optimistic about this team, and I'm going to give reasons why to be optimistic. And, but you can check those all out. It's on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. And I'm also the editor of Eagle Insider, part of 247, covering football, basketball. I've got hockey writers, baseball, lacrosse, all that good stuff. So come on over there. Check out our work over there. If you're a subscriber to 247 Louisville, you can check out my stuff, and you can actually come over to my board. We always have, I've got a whole crew of like Louisville squatters that are from the message boards that just won't leave.
Matt is a diehard BC fan, and at his heart, he is a diehard BC guy.
Yeah, hey, AJ, I don't think I've ever told you that inside joke. These fuckers call me BC Matt from time to time because over the last 3 years we've done this podcast, I've always spoken at BC in high regard because I've always been a fan of Jeff Hafley.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, BC comes up, I always get ribbed of BC man. Of course he thinks BC's going to do well.
Hey, it's better than being Wildcat, Matt. But I mean that'll bring it.
That's fighting words right there, right?
I don't know. After that photo he posted last week, maybe he is Wildcat Matt.
Oh, there it is.
Unflattering basketball picture.
That made its way up to Boston.
Matt showed me.
Yep.
All right.
That's all I gotta say. Yep.
Thank you again, AJ, for hopping on. If
Thanks,
you want
guys.
to learn more, go ahead and follow him. Have a good one.
You too.
All right, fellas. That was a very fun talk. And yeah, he's a hoot. And as a college hockey guy, I'm going to be hopping in there just to follow the Boston College hockey boards because they're always
BC
an elite program.
Sounds fun. That sounds like fun. That sounds like fun arguments for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and when it comes time for arguments now, it's time for us to make our predictions. So There's a varying range of lines that you can get for the Louisville-Boston College game on Friday. For the sake of the game, we're going to go with a hook, and we're going to go at 7.5, which is the most prominent line that we've seen with a hook so far on the season. At the top of the table, all by himself, is Matt McGavic at 5-2 on the year. Jacob Lane in second at 4-3, and then I'm no longer in the basement by myself. I finally tied it up with Vince Lococo last week.
I was let down. I was let down so hard. So many opportunities to win that gosh damn game, and it's like Jeff wants me to do a combine. It's like he wants it.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, maybe he's trying to see if you got any eligibility left. Let's get some life in those legs.
That too.
Yeah, that's a negative. That'll never happen. These knees, no.
So, Vince and I at the bottom of the table at 3 and 4, and it's time to do some picking. Lines at 7.5, and we've got the very, very official text from one Jacob Lane, who's going to lead us off. And Jacob Lane, despite the troubles that we have seen, is going with the Cards, giving up the 7.5 points. So, Jacob Lane taking Louisville. Matt, we'll take it to you next.
We got to get to 500 here before Matt. Keith, we have to. Go ahead.
I want to believe that Louisville can cover this and going away running in this one, but just the way the defense has played, I think Louisville can absolutely put up points, but they've had issues at tackle, and BC has one of the best edge rushers in the ACC, if not the FBS. Their secondary's been opportunistic, so I think they can make some plays. I think Louisville wins, but I'm picking BC to cover. I think in my prediction piece, I think that I had it at 31-28 Louisville.
So BC Matt taking the Eagles and the points.
I'm so shocked.
Vince, we'll take it to you next.
I'm gonna go with the Cards. I just hoping for a bounce back game. I'm hoping we don't get froze up by being Friday in Boston. I know we've talked about that a lot on this show and how that could play a factor with everything it being a shortened week for us. They're coming off a bye, right, guys? Are they coming off a bye, or is that next week?
No, their bye was before the Virginia.
I'm thinking about next week then.
They have a bye next week too.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm going with the Cards, although I am very nervous, and I don't blame Matt at all by any means for taking us not to cover.
It's not because I'm BC Matt.
No, it's not because you're BC Matt. Even though you've got a college football dynasty in year 2045 with fucking Boston College.
All right, so I'll round things off here. And I probably tipped my hand at who I'm picking going into this game. But this is just one of those games where, yes, they have an elite edge rusher. But other than that, we're bigger, faster, stronger than them. And their offense has not been impressive. So unless something completely unprecedented happens on the Boston College offensive side of the ball, which granted, Louisville's given up some pretty unprecedented performances.
Yeah.
But this isn't Miami. This isn't Notre Dame. This isn't even Virginia. It's probably comparable to Virginia, but Virginia offensively didn't destroy us, didn't scare us. We should dominate this team. And like I said on the previous pod, if we don't, I'm going to start asking some questions because that would be a immensely disappointing performance. I'm taking the Cards in a laugher, so I will happily give up those points. So
me and Keith, we're getting back up to 500 this week.
To recap, Vince, myself, and Jacob Lane all taking the Cards, giving up 7.5. Matt McGavic, the lone dissenter, taking Boston College in the points. Last time Matt was the lone dissenter was the SMU game. Fingers crossed, those results aren't the same, and we can get a win on our side of the board this week. I want to thank you all for tuning in to From the Pink Seats podcast to get yourself prepped for this Boston College game. A reminder, get down there. Tickle that subscribe button. Go to your closet. Find that old 7-iron you never use anymore. Smash that like button with it. Metaphorically, don't actually break your computer. get into
don't use the 7-iron. That's one of the best clubs in the bag. Use like a 2. You use like a 4-iron. I love the 7-iron. Love it. Go ahead.
Follow us on your audio feeds wherever you get your podcasts as well if you don't want to see my ugly mug. But with that, that's Vince Lococo. That's Matt McGavic. I'm producer Keith. Thank you again for tuning in. And as always, go Cards.